All right, let's look at some different ways that you can use the bone tool here. I have an object that I've kind of built here with kind of similar to how I've done the cactus in previous tutorials, but I've got these objects here. They're made up of three symbols, or are they? If I go into this and double click on it, this one object is made up of a lot of different symbols. These down here, if I go back, are made up of two symbols each. And same thing with this one. So when it comes to creating an object, what you basically can do is create lots of objects, group them together, and call them their own symbols. Because as you'll see here, I have top stem, and I have bottom stem, and then I have bottom stem with leaf, and I have top stem with leaf, and I have top flower, and I've got petals, and so on. So I built all of these with symbols. Keeps me from having to redraw everything, and I can just manipulate them individually. So also what it lets me do is piece them together how I want them to be. So I can take this and move it here. I can take this, move it here, or I can move them over here, and I can take this and I can rotate it. And oh, why is that rotation point way out there? Let's move that pivot point in the middle, rotate it here, move it around, and get like a different look from my flower here. So you can do this however you want. You can kind of customize your objects. Another cool thing is that you can just take them and flip them, so you get less things that are, you can squash them and make them look a little different if you want to. So I've got this object here. I'm going to pivot this. I'm going to build this up. Nice straight flower like that. And what I want to do is add a bone structure to this. And so I talked a little bit about bones before. What I can do is, in this, I have this labeled as a complex flower, and later I'm going to get into one for a simple flower. Our complex flower here is made up of all these different parts, right? In fact, I can take all of these things and I can right click on them and convert the whole thing into a giant symbol. I'll just call this whole flower and click OK. Now I've got a symbol for that whole flower. So now I can just be like bloop and move them all around. Okay, so I made these copies for a reason. So I go into this and I'm like, okay, well, now I've got these different symbols here. Great. I'm going to animate these three different parts, the bottom, the top stem, and the top flower. Let's do a 2-second thing here. I'm going to go back to my first frame, and I'm going to apply a bone tool to it. I'm going to go down here and attach my bones there to there. Now, something funny happened when I did that. It turned this into an armature for one, and then it also brought this out to the foreground. I don't really like that, so what I'm going to do is choose this center object right here with my transform tool, and I'm going to control down and send that back behind my flower. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here. Now I've got three parts. So it's got a key pose here in its original pose. I'll move it here. I can now choose these different parts and rotate them. So let's do that. Let's take a move tool and rotate. See how they stay confined to each other, which is kind of cool. And because of where I placed my joint, I like it because that joint is placed at the bottom of this middle symbol right here, which means it's going to bend in a good place. If you don't like where it bends, what you can do is hit Q, and your pivot point is basically where it's going to bend. So you can move that pivot point where you need it to be. Pivot point for this first one is right here. Pivot point for this is right here, which is a good place for that to bend, I think. So let's go back, and now I've shifted it around from its original pose, and so now it shifts like this. Okay, kind of does a funny little thing. Now I can take this right here, this pose. I want it to return back to that pose. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it for mine. Keep it simple. I'm going to go copy that pose, and I'm going to paste the pose down here. So now it shifts back and forth. Well, that's good. That's a lot of work for just that one little motion though. So what I'm going to do within this armature, I'm going to go further into this and add some motions to these other things. So let's see. Let's go into the bottom stem. Now I've got these two things happening. What if I added a 2-second animation within this? Actually, I'll do that. Let's make this just a shorter animation, a 1-second animation, and let's do something right here. Before I do that, what I'm going to do is add a bone structure to it. So I'm going to add a bone. There's only 2 items here, so it's only 1, 2. Okay. Now I added the key pose there. I'm going to move on down the line, use my move tool, and let's add a little shift to this. Now you want to isolate your object. Now there's only 2 parts to this. So I can just give it like a little move down like that. So now it shifts, at least shifts down. I don't like how the whole thing shifts, so let's move it like that. There you go. That looks good. And just to keep things simple, I'm going to have it return back to that original pose. Paste it there, so it's going to go zip, zip. All right. So now I want to go into this part. I can't do it here. I have to back out to the whole flower. Select this middle part here. Go into this one. Now I want to add a bone structure to this. So let's do that here. And I'm going to take this and move it there. Simple. Open this up for 1 second. And kind of do the same thing. I'm going to shift this a little bit here. So it goes down, and then I'm going to take this pose, copy that pose, and paste the pose. So it does that. Now I want to add a little bit of something to this top part. So I'm going to back out to the whole flower, open up to my top symbol here, and I've got all these different parts. I don't know. Let's just leave the top part alone. I think we got enough happening. So when I play it here, nothing happens. But if I preview it, notice how they all move. All the different parts that I just animated. The bend and the whole thing, a little bit of leaf movement that I did, now they all kind of move together. And because I made that change to that one symbol, it applies it to all of them. So if you need your symbols to be something else, what you would have to do is recreate or rename a symbol. So if you wanted this flower to bend a different direction or do something else, then make sure that it's different symbols, different labels as what your other ones are. So that is getting into symbols, working with objects with multiple symbols and the bone tool. Let's get into something like a simple flower. Let's say you just want to do a line drawing of a flower. Let's use a brush. Use X. Let's use a different kind of color here. It's kind of different. And let's create just a simple flower shape. All right. Let's do one out here, one out here. Cool. Yeah, and let's get into that and see what we can do with this object. So it's in a simple flower. It's all together, right? Let's create a bone structure out of it. Can we do that with just one item? It's not a symbol. Let's see. I'm going to take this, move it up, and I dropped it. When I did that, it created an armature for it. Now I've created a joint right in the middle of the stem. I can do that again, and again, and again, and again. So it's not like a symbol where I can only put one object or one joint per symbol. I'm able to do it, since it's a single line drawing, on different, or on the same line itself. So now I've got this happening. Okay, so now it's in its original pose. How can I animate this? And what's going to happen when I do? Let's take it and move it to here. And let's play around with this. Let's hold shift and rotate it. Notice what happens. All the geometry doesn't seem to want to move together, because these are known as like pivot points and constraints. And so it's kind of being constrained by other joints. So you're kind of limited. You can take this and stretch it around, which is kind of cool. But see how if I'm moving these, it's being pulled right here, which means you would have to adjust. So weird things can happen when you do this. You can hold shift and you can isolate. Oops, I was holding caps. You can isolate certain joints like that and kind of rock them back and forth. Notice what's happening now. I've got bones crossing over, and so it's creating this weird stuff. If I stretch it back out this way, maybe it'll fix itself. But this doesn't look right, and it's possibly because of how I'm bending my shapes. It's thinking this is all one shape, and it's trying to keep it all together, which can be kind of interesting, but it can also lead to some problems. So I'm just going to keep bending this around. See, it's kind of constrained by its own bone structure. Can lead to some interesting effects. A lot of them might not be desirable. So now I've got it all moving and it works, but it's not made to be something complex like this. I can see if the stem were just like a long tail, this could probably work just fine. But once you start adding more details to something like this, then it becomes kind of difficult to do. Now, if I wanted to have it go back to what it had done before, I'm just going to copy these in backwards order and paste them down the line. And the reason I do that is because when it loops in your whole animation, it will be a continuous loop. So I'm going to Control Enter now. Got all these things kind of happening, shifting around. Looks pretty good. Now you have an idea of how this phone system can actually work and some of the restraints that you have when it comes to this. So that's pretty much it for now. If you have any more questions about phone systems, then come see me. Let me know. And see you next time.